Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to the Pan-African debate on your Pan-African channel, Afrique Media. Today, I have two main topics that we're going to talk about for this edition. And I have panelists with me in the studio that are going to give you more details and throw more light on these two topics that we're going to discuss for today. First of all, we're going to talk about what's happening in Sierra Leone. We know that they had their presidential elections on Wednesday, and they're still awaiting the results. But we are going to look at the details on everything around the elections, how the elections went through. Talking about Dr. Ernest Bar Koroma, his reign. He has ended his 2 mandates and he has decided to step down, allowing some other person to take over. But he handpicked somebody to replace him. We're going to talk about the foreign minister who replaced him during this election period. And looking at the results might come out probably next week. So we're going to give you details on that next week. But for today, we're going to analyze the situation in Sierra Leone and what we might expect in the next coming days. Secondly, we're going to talk about what's happening in Nigeria too. The government of Nigeria and even the government of Cameroon claim that they have eradicated Boko Haram, but we discovered that just last month, Boko Haram still hit one of the science and technology school in Nigeria in Yobo State. And this time around, 110 girls were kidnapped after we had a situation of about 2 years ago, which 280 girls were still taken, and up to date, not all of them have been recovered by the country. And now a new situation with 110 girls being taken. So, did the government not see this coming? Did the government not prepare for this, given that they claim they have eradicated Boko Haram? That is what we're going to be talking about for the second topic today, ladies and gentlemen. So to start up this edition this time around, first of all, we're going to have the press roundup. That is everything that took place within the week. And we have Clarice Wildoven with us in the studio. She's going to give us some newspapers in the African continent to tell us those things that really marked this week. Before I come back to present to you my panel, and then we kick off with the debate and the two topics we have for this edition. Good day, Clarice, and welcome, and thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much, Emanuela Nyoki. Good day to you, and greetings as well to the panel for today's edition of the Pan-African Debate. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's edition of Press Today Roundup. Of course, we'll be giving you some papers we visited in the course of the week. We take you first of all to the Southern African nation, that is Zimbabwe, to look at the Herald newspaper, which talked about ties between Zimbabwe and Russia, while the paper recounted that Zimbabwe and Russia on Thursday signed 3 memoranda of understanding, one of which seeks to facilitate the setting up of a Russian industrial zone in Zimbabwe. The memoranda of understanding were signed following a meeting between Russian Foreign Affairs Minister Sergei Lavrov and President Emmerson Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe. The New Times Rwanda uncovered how President Paul Kagame said that nations that take women empowerment and gender equality seriously are likely to prosper, citing Rwanda's experience and benefit from women empowerment. President Kagame said it was no coincidence that the rebirth of Rwanda has been characterized by women empowerment. Now, Daily Nation, Kenya's online publication, recounted how the meeting between NASA leader Raila Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta on Friday sparked reactions from around the country. Leaders and residents welcomed their resolve to put aside their differences and work together to reconstruct a nation that is responsive to the urgent need for prosperity, fairness, and dignity for all Kenyans. Let's take you now to Tanzania, where Daily News Journal noted why and how China has promised to boost cooperation with African countries on strategic threats such as terrorism, piracy, and natural disaster, as the continent remains an integral part of the efforts to build a better world for all. Chinese Minister for Foreign Affairs Wang Yi vowed that changes in the world will not break China-Africa relationship. Making our next stop in Liberia, the leading Liberia's online journal, Daily Observer, reported that President George Weah last Monday told diaspora Liberians in Nigeria at the Liberian embassy in Abuja that they are part of his administration. Addressing the Liberian community in Nigeria as part of his two-day state visit to the Federal Republic, President Weah encouraged Liberians in Nigeria and elsewhere to return home and join him to move the country forward. Now, Thursday's publication of Egypt's independent journal cited that Sudan's ambassador to Egypt, Abdel Mahmoud Abdel Halim, revealed on Thursday that Sudan has various agreements to be implemented with Egypt and Saudi Arabia, pointing out that his country proposed to Egypt to establish, a joint force to protect the border between the two countries. The Sudanese ambassador's statements came during a press conference at the Sudanese embassy in Cairo. Now, finally, in Nigeria, Daily Post recited that the government of Benue State has cancelled the planned mass burial for victims of Fulani herdsmen attack in Okpoko area of the state. The government initially planned to hold mass burial for the 24 victims of the Omosu Edimoga herdsmen attack on Friday. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we had for you for Press Today Roundup today. But that's not all. Keep enjoying your debate program as I leave you with Emanuela Nyoki, and have a lovely weekend.
Thank you very much, Clarice. Thank you for presenting us with the Press Roundup. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move over straight away to the program today. As I earlier said, we'll talk about the presidential elections in Sierra Leone, and we're also going to talk about the situation in Nigeria and what is being prepared vis-a-vis the situation which took place just last month. We're going to also visit it. So before I present to you my panel, let's first of all watch this report, which was still done by Clarice Wildoven on the presidential elections, which just took place on Wednesday in Sierra Leone and everything around this election. When we come back, I'll present my panel and then we'll begin the debate.
Millions of Sierra Leoneans on Wednesday, March 7 went to the polls across the country for general elections meant to elect its new political leaders, including a new president and a new parliament. While the nationals are anxiously waiting for the outcome of the just concluded polls, the March 7, 2018 elections remain a factor to emphasize the growth of electoral democracy in the West African region. The Sierra Leone National Electoral Commission (NEC) said 16 candidates participated in the landmark elections, including 2 women and 14 men. However, the main challenges remained Samura Kamara of the ruling All People's Congress (APC), also former foreign minister, and Julius Madubior of the main opposition Sierra Leone's People's Party (SLPP), as well a former military ruler. Worth noting is the fact that Mr. Bior lost the last election to outgoing President Ernest Bai Koroma. Incumbent Koroma dropped his candidature in this year's vote after fulfilling his 2 consecutive 5-year mandate as president of the West African nation. In the meantime, as vote counting continues across the nation, the election chief has called for patience. As events unfolded, 2 opposition parties expressed grave concerns over the electoral process, saying it does not reflect the will of the people. Coalition for Change, CFC, and National Grand Coalition, NGC, claim that their agents were evicted from some polling stations when the counting of votes started. The atmosphere was tense and tensions high after a police raid on an opposition leader's home. Notwithstanding, the ECOWAS Observer Mission in its preliminary report noted that the election was largely peaceful, free and fair, though with some challenges which were under control. According to the National Elections Watch, NEEW, the country risks witnessing runoff elections as no party secured the 55% plus 1 vote threshold needed to win the elections in the first round. Partial tallies, however, expected within 48 hours, and final results will be made public in 2 weeks.
Thank you very much, Clarice Wodoven, for that detailed report on everything which happened since Wednesday as the people of Sierra Leone went down to the poll. I'm going to present to you my panel, those that are going to be in the studio with me, and we're going to talk about these two topics for this edition. And you also at home, you have the opportunity to call us because the numbers are on the screen. If you have something to contribute or you want to participate on the program, you can also call us and definitely your voice will be heard. So, Mr. Shunengwe, good afternoon. You're welcome to the program.
Good afternoon, Emanuela. Good afternoon, Kwete. And good afternoon to all of Africa. It's once more a pleasure to sojourn here to discuss issues that promote Pan-Africanism. And I will not proceed without extending my sincere greetings to His Royal Majesty, the Paramount Fount of Bafut, Fonabumbi II, who is celebrating his 50th anniversary as Fount in Bamenda, Cameroon in December this year. Call upon the organizing committee to do everything possible to give this occasion the pomp and gaiety that it really deserves.
Thank you for honoring our invitation. Mr. Kyati Edmond, good afternoon. You're welcome to the debate.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to Mr. Sunet, and good afternoon to all your televiewers. It's always a pleasure, to be here and to build a new Africa. So I'm happy to be here again. Happy Women's Day.
In arrears, thank you very much. Thank you for thinking about that. Okay, to start off this edition, before we talk about what's happening in Sierra Leone, I want us to, first of all, just have a glance on this image, which it happened yesterday in Kenya, and it was very significant as most people went onto Twitter, social media to congratulate these two men, particularly President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya, who invited Raila Odinga to the presidency to talk about peace and reconciliation, because he says it's high time they move away from everything, and the people of Kenya are the ones important, so they need peace to reign. And as you're watching the image, two of them, they spoke, and they have decided that peace should reign, even though the process is still on. But first of all, Raila Odinga accepted to come. This is something that he has been called a couple of times and he refused to come. Instead, he went ahead to go on with the swearing in, the unusual swearing in and illegal swearing in, which took place in the month of January. And many people around him have gone down for it. There are people who have been jailed, and companies, even TV stations that were locked up for covering the events. And after that, he himself called for elections again in August. There's a little polemic all around that. But the fact that he accepted to respect the invitation of Uhuru Kenyatta and go to the presidency, and they spoke yesterday morning, that those are pictures after their meeting. I want both of you to just give your comments on this image. Some people say it's political maturity. Some others say Raila Odinga is afraid because he knows that only what he did had to make him go down. But what do you think, Mr. Shuna? I'll begin with you. What do you think about this act between the president and the main opposition leader?
Yes, Emanuela. As a Pan-Africanist, I've always said that in every political dispensation, there's always room for reconciliation. We have seen the high level of political maturity that has been exhibited by Raila Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta. If I have to take you memory lane, you know that the father of Raila Odinga was Kenya's first vice president, and the father of Uhuru Kenyatta was Kenya's first president. So these are children who grew up in the same community, in the same house, with the same standards. They went to the same schools. They understand the values of statehood. Despite the squabble, they knew that one day would come, and this point has finally come for peace and tranquility to reign in the political atmosphere of Kenya. That is to do politics with maturity, politics with understanding, politics not backstabbing, but understanding that if your opponent has done something correct, you applaud him for that. And if you have made a mistake and you are corrected, you accept your mistake, and we move forward for the sake of Africa, because we are all Pan-Africanists and we are working for the interests of Africa.
Thank you, Mr. Shune. Mr. Kyate, some other people say they should throw Raila Odinga in prison after he did what he did in January, but some other people still say that there's a huge number of people behind Raila Odinga, and if they put him in prison, that will still cause problems in the country. So what do you think about the move which President Uhuru Kenyatta just did by inviting him over to talk?
Well, some people said exactly. I was among the people who said he should be jailed up because of what he did. And did you remember my words were not very soft? When he did what he did in the stadium. Yes, I was very hard. Talking about him.
Because you cannot have two presidents in the country.
Exactly. But I would like to say something. Only idiots never change. But when you prove yourself to be a mature person, to be a reasonable one, you know, it is normal that they give, you know, they change also the opinion on you. Like now, for instance, I am about changing my opinion on him, because just the fact that he has accepted the invitation from Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, it proves that, you know, he gives more importance, he gives more value to the life of people, because of what he did could have caused a lot of, you know, damages,
yes,
you know, including waste of lives. So by doing that, he has proven himself to be a political matured actor in Kenya, and then he has proven that, you know, we can count on him to really reconcile the country as a whole. Remember, we had the same problem, the same political situation in Ivory Coast. I can tell you, the president, the president of Ivory Coast, Mr. Ouattara, he had done the same. Instead of sending somebody
to The Hague.
If he had done the same, I think we wouldn't have been now living the situation we have in Ivory Coast. So I think political actors this is what we expect from them, to know that the interest of the nation is much more, you know, higher than their own interest, personal interest. So I think that is something that normally everybody has to appreciate it the way it is,
and probably copy.
And probably copy it. That is something we expect. If they had done it in Gabon, for instance, Jean Ping and Omar and Ali Bongo wouldn't have.
But let's not
playing.
forget, Ali Bongo invited Mr. Jean Ping a couple of times, and he did
never
not come.
show up.
Even when they organized the national dialogue
He
for
never
reconciliation.
showed up.
Yeah, so
that is what we expect, and that is why we always say, and I will repeat it again, that good example, unfortunately, always come from English side of Africa. French side of Africa is always behind. You know, I think it's time for French-speaking part of Africa to learn, to copy the good examples. You know, they are not enemies. We can be political opponents, but we are not enemies. If at the end of the day we are both fighting for the interest of the same country, of the same nation, and of the same people, there are all reasons for us to stand together, to be together, than to separate. Because when we separate, there are huge risk that the nation will break apart. So it is important to appreciate this.
Okay. Definitely. Thank you very much, Mr. Kiate. So let's get into the vive subject of today, which is the presidential election, which took place on Wednesday. It has passed, and they are still preparing because they said the counting is going on. But first of all, there's something I want to say. The Electoral Commission said, and that is what their constitution states, any candidate who has to win this election must have at least 55% of the vote. And we saw that this year, the country really moved up to more than 1 million people who registered for the election. This is the first that Sierra Leone has ever had, people who registered to vote for elections. And the person who will win must have at least 55%. And so far, the Electoral Commission says, from the counts that they have done, none of the candidate is going to be up to that amount, the particular number that the country wants. So they might actually do a second round of the elections between the two candidates who will almost probably be in a similar position. But how do you see the elections in Sierra Leone and the way things went on, Mr. Shuna?
As a matter of fact, it's a landmark historical event that took place in Sierra Leone. Having 3.1 million people participating in the elections is something that's never happened before.
Yes, this is the first.
I think it goes without any saying that when you fit an approximately square peg in a square hole, you expect to come out with a square block. And we must understand that this success didn't fall from the sky. I am of the very strong opinion that it is because of the dynamism and the legacy that has been left behind by Dr. Koroma when he took over power in 2007. You know, he instituted some reforms to bring back the country to stability, to bring back the country.
To make people get interested in voting. And you must realize that that is the same strategy that he used before taking over from Idris Tagui as the party chairperson in 2012. Yeah, because you must realize that he's a man who is full of energy. He's a man who is full of flair. He's a man who has shown
love and love for his country, and he's been very pragmatic in the way he does his things. And you must realize that as an insurance agent is people who work for the interests and for the lives of people. So he transferred his professionalism as an insurance agent to put it into his political career, because you remember he said that he wants to rule Sierra Leone as a corporation, as a business empire, that you are working to derive dividends. He doesn't want to rule it as other politicians have come to make political names. He wants to use Sierra Leone as a business entity that you work with it and you multiply the capital so that it grows and the country grows. And we realize that he has stepped up a lot of measures, economic measures, political measures, and especially in the health sector, where he came up with a lot of reforms, free treatment for pregnant women and youths, which was a very catastrophic state before he took over. And he went forward to instigate a strong fight against corruption, and we realize that he has moved forward with the level of corruption. The corruption commission that he installed, he empowered them onto the extent that he himself declared his assets and pushed all his ministers and top government officials to declare their assets. This by curbing corruption, even though corruption has not been curbed to the fullest, but at least he came out with some measures that pushed the citizens to love the country and love to come back to start participating in political affairs of the nation.
Declaring his assets, which we don't have that a lot in the other French African countries, because when they talk of declaring assets, ministers and presidents never come out to do that. Thank you for bringing up that point. Mr. Kiete, just tell us, how do you see these elections? How did you see the preparation and the fact that he decided to step down, not try to change the constitution, because he could still decide? We have seen countries in Africa that the president, when their mandate, he has a 5-year term, and that means he has done 10 years in total. He said it's enough. I've probably done what I could. Let some other person take over. What do you think about that act, and then with the preparation of the elections, which just took place in Sierra Leone?
First, I would like to say again, thanks to these countries who are there to prove that Africa is not shithole countries like we think, like we are doing in French-speaking areas. I'm sorry to say that some people might think I'm having a particular problem with French-speaking countries, but French-speaking countries are behaving as children of the same woman, and same parents, and they are having the same behavior. Already, it is important to know where Sierra Leone has come from. They have, this is a country they have really gone through a lot. And when you see somebody like Dr. Koroma, he was in the insurance before. He's not a political, he doesn't have
he's not a politician.
Background. He's not a politician. He's just somebody who has got in his mind the huge interest of Sierra Leone. So he's decided to work really, like he was saying, he has put in place a commission to fight against corruptions. And we have seen the result of this corruption. It's not what we're calling, for instance, here, CONAC, ANIF, all these type of names, institutions, with no single result. But he has put in place a commission that he was piloting the commission.
And he started from himself, like declaring his assets.
Exactly. He gave the good example. He showed the example. He said, okay, this is what I have. And at the end of the day, by the time I will be leaving the office, I will again declare my asset. If you realize that I have used my position to, take all the wealth of the country, to acquire wealth of the country for my interest, then you will judge me. But he declared his asset, and at the end of his term, he still declares his asset, which is a good example of good governance. That is what we are asking in most of our countries. Not only that, with all what he's done, because if you see the political interest all the people of God in Sierra Leone, like he was saying, it's not an operation of the Holy Spirit coming straight from the heaven. No, it is a work that has been done. People are having hope again. People are believing in politics again. People think political opinion matters again. People think they can still believe in politicians. That is why they have all this interest in politics, and that is why you have this huge number of people going to vote, because they think it matters. They can do that. They can go and vote. They can go and decide who is going to rule their country. And that is what we expect from politicians. That is what we expect from them. And he did all this job, and at the end of the day, he decided to respect the constitution. After the 2 terms, he said, I am stepping down. I am going. This is somebody, if he decides to stay again, people will still vote for him. He could say, well, 80% of my fellow compatriots are with me. They want me to stay there again. Well, I can modify some terms in the constitution, some disposition in the constitution, and stay there. No, he said, I'm going. I have done what I decided to do, and other people in Sierra Leone can still do the same. They can continue.
Or maybe even better.
And they can even do better. Why not? Some people think when they become presidents, they become a messiah, come from heaven, that only them can achieve certain things. No, it is wrong. So it is a good thing when you pick a country from nowhere. Sierra Leone, like we said, has gone through a lot. You pick a country from nowhere and you put the pillars of the country to develop the country, to construct the country, a country where everybody will feel good. Everybody will be happy to live in this country. That is what we expect from politicians. Don't take a country as a personal shop where you have all the rights, but nothing, no accountability, nothing to say, nothing to do. No, that is not what we expect. Instead, that's what we see in our French-speaking countries, Cameroon, Gabon, Congo, where you will see Côte d'Ivoire, you will see a particular family laying hand on everything and taking everything for them and for themselves. It is not good. These type of things bring a lot of injustice, a lot of frustrations, and the end might not be good.
Thank you, Mr. Kwate. Mr. Shuna, what I want us to talk about, not all were actually always a bed of roses during this electoral period. Even during his reign, we're going to come back and talk about what happened during his reign. But let's talk about what happened during this electoral period while he was preparing for the campaign. A lot of critiques have come upon him when he handpicked somebody to replace him. He handpicked Mr. Kuruma, who used to be the foreign minister of the country, and he said, I choose this person to replace me in the party. The ruling party is the APC party, and he said that this person will stand for elections in the APC party. Not everybody in the party was happy about him. They would have loved that probably they should go into voting and then they vote for the candidate that they want to represent their party during the elections. But he handpicked somebody, and a lot of critics came on him because of that. What do you think about this gesture? Is it that he really saw something in the foreign minister that he thinks that he could be the best person, or was it right for him to really handpick somebody to represent his party? Meanwhile, the party, he does not own the party. It is the ruling party which took him to power. He's the leader, but if you're stepping down, then the party needed to vote some other person.
The APC is a democratic institution, actually being led by Dr. Kuruma. And an enthusiastic leader like Dr. Kuruma, who has left his footsteps, would like to have another candidate who will come and walk in those same footsteps and even walk better than him. Having grown through that party as a popular leader.
For more than 10 years now.
Yes, as a popular leader for more than 10 years. I think he knows and understands the nooks and crannies of that party better than any other person. And we very well know that, as I earlier made mention of it, he has left a positive legacy. And as a man of the people, we want that legacy to continue. And we know that following democratic principles, he just proposed, and the party could as well call a Congress to reject his proposition. But majority of the party comrades bought his idea, and that is why the Foreign Affairs Minister Kuruma is the candidate representing the APC party actually in the elections that we are looking forward for him to winning to become the next president of Sierra Leone. But notwithstanding, the reign of Dr. Kuruma has not always been the best. It has not been the best because he faced a lot of criticism following the way he mishandled journalists who criticized him in his policies. And we know very well in Africa that journalists have always gone through a lot of torture when it comes to implementation of diplomatic principles,
because politics is a no-go area in Africa.
Yes, but we understand very well too that some journalists have shown some frailty in criticizing, not because they think that what they are doing is genuine, but because they have received kickbacks from other political opponents to do those type of things. We know it quite. You know very well what I'm talking about.
What you're talking about.
Yes. So the reign of Dr. Koroma was not really to the best, because he faced a lot of criticism too, and we must understand that he was very hard with his police. The police brutality on some of the citizens who was unscrupulous was not easy. He was very hard in terms of discipline, and we know very well that Sierra Leone is coming from a crisis. They were coming from a crisis from about 30 years ago. And some of the citizens grew up with that unscrupulous, stubborn nature. And if you don't have a rigorous police force, you won't be able to maintain peace and stability. So I think the brutality of his force was for the interest of bringing the citizens to order, so we can have some stability in that country. And we think that he has built the stability to a level of confidence that the next president who is coming should be able to take it to another level for the interest of the Sierra Leonean people and the African people in general.
How did you see him handling the Ebola crisis? Because this is one of the biggest crises when it comes to their health that hit the country, and it almost ruined his country during that period.
Yes, you know that no matter how good your harvest is, you will always have some bad grain that will be moving inside. We know very well that during the Ebola crisis, he invested a lot into fighting this crisis in his country. But we know very well that some ministers and directors who were handling the budget that was directed towards the Ebola crisis did a lot of embezzlement. And we were comforted by the fact that the Commission on Corruption hammered on most of them, and they were picked up, and most of them are serving long and heavy jail terms now. And we think that this cleanses his financial record, despite that because when you appoint somebody, you are appointing a person out of his competence, but you don't know what the person is carrying in his heart. And those who went against the rules and regulations of financial transactions and embezzled money were picked up and locked up, and they are in the process of trying to recover the money. But we know that his reign was the one of tranquility. His reign was the one geared towards bringing good governance in Sierra Leone, and we think he achieved his intentions.
Thank you, Mr. Gov't. Now, some people say the foreign minister, because the foreign minister worked very much with the Chinese government to bring a lot of businesses, road development, hospitals that were built in Sierra Leone, that they signed contracts with the Chinese people, and the foreign minister was like the middleman between the country and the Chinese people. And most people are thinking that him handpicking the foreign minister, it's like there's a liaison between China that has made him to choose that person, so that their contract that they have, they should not lose this contract, and it was not good for him handpicking somebody to replace him.
Emmanuel, first of all, I would like to say no human work is perfect. Can never be. No matter what you do, or no matter how good you are, you will face some criticisms always. Let's not forget about that. But you know, like we were saying, Dr. Ernest Koroma is the one who really planted the pillar of a new Sierra Leone. And at this stage, after 10 years, we cannot say that the new building, Sierra Leone, is already really strong. So I think he was more concerned by the continuity of this work more than everything. Of course, normally, democratically, he should have allowed the party to whether maybe organize election or decide a way to select somebody. And as you said, most of the investment, most of their contract they have done, they have carried out in Sierra Leone was from China.
Yes, and followed up by the foreign minister.
And all these contracts were followed up by the foreign minister. Means he's very connected with all these investors. And what they were doing, like I was saying, the pillars are not so planted, are not deeply planted so that they should allow, they can go and do whatever they want. So I think by handpicking this foreign minister, he wanted to assure the continuity of all what they have been doing during his 10 years. And it is important to understand that, because if you now come and cut it and allow somebody maybe to go, maybe he will not succeed to convince these investors to come and continue to build up the nation. Maybe if he want to change the partners, it will be hard for him to find new partners who understand the policy of the country and bring in more investment. I think all these really determined Mr. Corona in his action to handpick his foreign minister to continue what he's done so far.
Do you think he's going to control him, because they say he's also putting him there because after that he's going to have a kind of control over him? Do you think so?
I'm not sure I'm not quite certain. I can't say it with certainty that is what he's having in his mind to control the foreign minister. I don't think. This has happened somewhere before in Russia, where Mr. Vladimir Putin wanted to, to step down.
The constitution stated that he could not stay there for more than 2 terms, so he needed to step down, and some other person.
And then he brought his prime minister, Mr. How do you call it again? Anyway, he brought his prime minister, and then later on
he came back
as a president. Maybe from that example, they can say maybe he wants to control him, but this man has never really expressed any idea to come back again after this foreign minister. No, I think he has decided to step down. But what I think his main motivation was to assure the continuity of this investment with the Chinese partners. Because if they carry it now, presently, it will become hard again, because already when you've started something somewhere and then you carry it without achieving all what you have as a plan. And also it would have been terrible if he said, no, I haven't achieved, because that's the theory in Africa. Oh, I haven't achieved what I need, what I have already. I started, please give me 5 more years to achieve all what. No, it is wrong. There is a saying that somebody say, oh, I have a bit of a bread, I need a bit of butter, and when the butter is finished, when the bread is finished, I still have a bit of butter, please give me more bread, and then again and again and again.
The person stays in power.
So I think, like I said, it is not perfect all what he has done. We cannot say he is God, he's done everything perfect. No, we are not going to say that. We know that certain things were not really that rose, certain things were questionable. Of course, he's a human. We have to understand that. He's a human, and we can still question certain things, but I think they should understand. And I think if the party has approved.
Yes, the party definitely approved.
Because he
handpicked him, but he did not actually
dictate. Yes. He did not say no.
He said, I choose this person, and then the party,
it is because I'm sure if they have approved, it's because he has explained to them. He has given them all the motivations, all the reason why he should be the one to continue after him. Because I'm sure in the party, there are other people who had the ambition too.
Definitely.
So if he has succeeded in convincing them that please allow this man to replace me, I'm sure he must have given them good reasons, good motivations, that
allowed them.
Yeah. So I think we can understand that if the party, which is the institution, if they have understood the case, I think we can understand the case too.
Last words on Sierra Leone before we go to Nigeria.
If I must add to what Edmond Kwate is saying, we know very well in advanced democracies that the outgoing candidate always endorses the incoming candidate. To be sure there's continuity, to be sure that the electric line continues. We see what happened in the United States of America. We see what happened in Liberia next door, where Sirleaf Johnson did not endorse the candidate from her party, but instead endorsed the candidature of George Weah. And the candidate was angry and she was expelled from the party. You don't endorse somebody you are not sure is going to continue with the same lifeline that you have built. So I think it is a principle of advanced democracy, and as we are progressing in democracy in Africa, I think that's what other political parties and political institutions should try to copy, so that we can also boast in the League of Democratic Nations.
Thank you. Last words.
Yeah, just like it's not only in Sierra Leone that you see that happen. You see all what Obama did to endorse Hillary Clinton. But unfortunately, it didn't work. It doesn't work always. You know, she was the candidate of the Democratic Party, but
she did not win the election.
She did not win the election, but Obama did everything.
Yes.
I mean, he even went to campaign. He went out to campaign for her. It's not only in Sierra Leone that this happened. So I'm sure that there are strong arguments that he gave to the party to endorse actually the foreign minister and say he's the right person to assure the continuity of what we have started.
Thank you. Okay, so we're done with what is happening in Sierra Leone. We're going to be expecting the results anytime soon, probably next week. But so far, the Electoral Commission says nobody is up to the 55%, but there are 3 candidates that are almost meeting in the same position. So there will probably be a second round of the elections before Monday. We're going to see what happens in Sierra Leone, and we wish them well. Over to Nigeria, talking about what happened last month. We have 110 girls that were taken from the government girls' school, that is of science and technology in that part of the continent, in the Yobe state in Nigeria. This is still in the northern part of Nigeria. This comes some years after the 280 girls were still taken by assumed Boko Haram militants in Nigeria. And up to date, all the girls have not been recovered. And the government, is it that they dropped their guard on the situation because they claimed that they had eradicated Boko Haram? Where is this one now coming from? So let's watch this report by Laurencia Lomu. When we come back, we'll talk about that.
After declaring in 2015 that the extremist group Boko Haram had been defeated, the Nigerian government has confirmed that 110 girls are missing in the latest attack by the insurgent group on civilians. The apparent abduction has revived painful memories of an infamous 2014 kidnapping of 276 girls from a school in Chibok and the past administration's botched attempt to address Boko Haram's kidnappings. Boko Haram militants stormed the government girls' science and technical school in the northeastern town of Dapchi on February 19, opening fire as they drove into the town on machine gun-mounted trucks. According to witnesses, the attackers were camouflaged, causing a number of students to think they were soldiers. The town of 15,000, which is a 3-hour drive from the city of Maiduguri, where the insurgency was born, has long feared an attack by Boko Haram. Following the recent attack, the state government of Yobe told reporters that around 50 girls were missing, but parents counted more than 100 absent. The Nigerian government, through its information ministry in a statement last Sunday, confirmed that 110 girls were missing after the Dapchi school attack, following days of silence on the children's fate. The statement came after authorities were unable to account for 110 of the school's 906 students. The authorities initially denied that any student had been kidnapped. In its quest to see into it that the missing girls are found, the federal government said Tuesday it had set up a panel to investigate the abduction of the 110 girls. Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed said a Major General would head the panel of Nigerian security agencies that will examine what security was in place at the school and its northern town Dapchi in Yobe State before the attack. The 12-member committee was inaugurated on Wednesday by the National Security Advisor, retired Major General Babagana Monguno, who described the abduction as worrisome and said it does not portray the country in good light. The military had withdrawn from Dapchi weeks before the February 19 attack, saying its troops were needed elsewhere and claiming that security was handed over to police. The kidnapping is the worst jihadist assault to have hit Nigeria since Buhari came to power. The kidnapping has raised questions about the military's repeated claims that the Islamist militants are on the verge of defeat after nearly 9 years of bitter fighting. It has equally led to questions about the extent of the government's grip on security and why promises to improve security of schools appear not to have been implemented despite the Chibok incident.
Thank you very much, Laurencia Lum, on that detailed report on what has been happening in Nigeria since 2014. So I'm going to begin with you, Edmund Kuyate. What is happening? The government has claimed many times that they have eradicated Boko Haram, and we should have believed that much security should be put in the northern part, because this is just a 3-hour drive from Borno State, where in Maiduguri, where all the other attacks have been taking place, and so all that area was secure. But now, as we heard in the reports, just a week before that, the military were taken off there and sent elsewhere. Was it that? That means there's a good monitor system that the Boko Haram insurgent group have. Immediately they discovered that these people were taken off, the came and attack. So what is happening? What can you say about the situation in Nigeria?
First, it's very sad, you know, being the shoe of the parents whose girls have been abducted. You know, you can feel the pains of these families. That's why I would like to express my sympathy to all those families who are actually suffering from all this. And already, we don't understand. There is a lot of propaganda from Nigeria about Boko Haram. Today they will say they have eradicated the group, there is no more Boko Haram. Tomorrow they will say Mr.
They have attacked someone.
Yeah, and
Sheku is dead.
Sheku is dead, and tomorrow they will see a video coming from Mr. Sheku. I think it is time really to give accurate information about all this. People want to know exactly what is going on, you know, so far as this Boko Haram.
So they should be on their guard.
Of course. And we do not understand. And that is the same question that you asked in your report. Nobody understands after what happened with the 220 girls in Chibok. We do not understand how schools around could be allowed like this without any security. And we all know that this Boko Haram, the strength of Boko Haram is because they have people all over. They are in the village. They have their members all over. So when you remove the military, the
information goes.
Information goes that the place is free. So it gives them now free way to go and do whatsoever they want to do. And that is what happened. Because this happened after 1 week only after they withdraw the army from that place, which is not normal. Because normally, all the schools, not only schools, but institutions where people are supposed to be guarded, normally are supposed to be secured by army.
Given that they have not been eradicated, because
exactly.
that is proof.
It is proof. And every day, not every day, but most of the time, from time to time, when after they've said the thing has been eradicated, but from time to time you will say, oh, they have attacked, they have struck here, they have done. No. I think it's time for Nigeria to stop propaganda and give us accurate facts about Boko Haram so that people should know what to do. Can they go back to their village, or should they go and relocate somewhere to avoid being in this sad situation? Because you imagine a family, you know, now living without knowing the whereabouts.
Some parents are even say they are not going to send their children to school again.
And that is the impact. That is the consequence. Because what is the point? Sending your children and then having your heart beating every day because you never know what will happen. Yeah. You never know what will happen to them next. It is not. I think it is important to stop propaganda and then give us accurate facts, or taking real actions to eradicate these people, and and then give more peaceful mind to the population. This has been going on for years now.
More than 9 years today.
More than 9 years. I don't understand that Nigeria army has not been able to really eradicate these things and then take them, really sweep them out of the country. I think it is time for them to really concentrate, stop propaganda, and give the army the means, the whip, all what they need to really, be it the intelligentsia whatsoever they have, to combine all what it takes, to take this out of the country. People are suffering a lot. It is not good. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Krete. Mr. Shune, what is your take on the situation? Because the military left the situation in the hand of the police. And with what happened, it looks as if the police is not well trained to handle the Boko Haram insurgent group, because we hear about their ammo and what they have. The police people don't even have those kind of guns. So I'm sure if they are coming, the police will even be the one to run. If we hear the way and if you hear their entrance, they always come with heavy shooting. And when the police don't have those kind of ammo to face such people, the only thing they have to do is to move away and run. What do you think about the situation which just happened in Nigeria and the way the government has been handling things since then?
Obviously, Emanuela, as a parent, I'm deeply flabbergasted by this new adoption. You know, Nigeria is gradually becoming a no man's land.
A no man's land, yeah.
When Buhari took power, it sparked some hope.
Yeah.
But out of a sudden, we are seeing the situation moving from better to worse. If I must remind our spectators, our telespectators, the Boko Haram is an extremist group that is struggling to institute the caliphate, the Islamic caliphate.
Take off Christianity. Take
Yes,
off
in
everything
Nigeria,
about God.
which is very, very dangerous. 20,000 people have been killed in this struggle for over 9 years, and 2 million people have been displaced. I think this calls for concern, yet the Nigerian government has not yet declared any major emergency. They are still treating this Boko Haram issue as a normal extremist case. But I'm happy that Buhari came up this time around to declare it a national disaster. I think by declaring it a national disaster, he is going to take it. He is not going to take it this time with a pinch of salt, because if you spit in air, be sure you are going to have a drop on your nose. And this is a clear sign to the Nigerian government that this extremist group are taking this matter very, very seriously. You must remember that 4 years ago, when the Chibok girls were captured, and later on some of them were found, over 100 of them are still missing up to today. And if 110 girls are taken again, we are now talking of over 200 girls who are missing, are in the hands of terrorists. This is very, very alarming. I'm sure we are thinking that we'll be coming back again with our Bring Back Our Girls campaign. From the US to Europe to the United Kingdom. The Bring Back Our Girls campaign hasn't touched Boko Haram in any way, because they are still going up and still going around with their same activities. So, as a matter of fact, I think that Buhari has been struck right in his face, and he must alert his military, and they must get to work so that he can keep a legacy. Notwithstanding, we know that Buhari is frail and is not able to manage the country squarely as he's supposed to be doing, and he is handing over power. And maybe because of this, there is a weak link somewhere, and that is why Boko Haram has taken advantage of it. If Buhari thinks that he's not ready to rule the country, he can decline, and we call for fresh elections in Nigeria, and we bring somebody who can bring peace and tranquility in Africa's most populous nation.
Thank you, Mr. Shonem. Mr. Edmond, given the parents' situation, because the parents say if they had told them that the security is not going to stay there that long, or given them the situation that probably Boko Haram was not eradicated, they would have been on their guards, they would have probably formed their vigilante group, and not even probably allowing their children to go to school, homeschool them. But the government gave them confidence that with the security, the military they were sent in the northern parts, so the parents had confidence to send their children. And now they're even saying that their children will not go to school. What impact do you think this is going to have in the northern part? Because this is what Boko Haram is using. They use most children that are not educated, use people who don't have jobs, and they promise them a better life and then get them to their hold.
And that is exactly the situation we've been saying. First, the target of Boko Haram is to eradicate school. They do not want to hear about school anymore, because the meaning of Boko Haram is that there's
white man education
is evil. That's what they're trying to say. Now, by so doing, the government is giving them reason, because what parents will do later on, they will stop their children from going to school. And if these children are not educated, what will happen next? They will join the ranks of Boko Haram, and then the movement will intensify. So that is why we're very shocked when we understand that the government, I don't understand why the commander-in-chief, being Mr. Buhari, did allow the army to move from that place, allow schools to stay without security. You know, whenever there is a problem like this, even here in Cameroon, for instance, you know what they're doing so far in the southwest and northwest? The least they can do is to allow some people to take care of schools, markets, shopping centers, banks, and so on. When the situation
cannot take off everybody.
Yes, they cannot take off everybody, and that is the mistake they make actually, by taking everybody, all the army They could have, and they allow the police. That is not the job of the police, of course. The police cannot even stand this, how do you call this, boko haram, because they are coming, when they are coming with heavy weapons. And we know that police people, they are using but simple pistols. That's all they got. You cannot do pistol to fight against somebody who's coming with tanks,
trucks and big armor.
Yeah, all these heavy weapons you can imagine. You used to see them when they are doing all this their propaganda. So I think it's going to have, psychologically, it's going to have an impact, serious impact on the children themselves, because even those children still in school, they will be afraid, because they will think it is our turn. Our turn can happen any moment from now. Tomorrow it may be what we don't know what will happen to us. Even if the parent want to force the children back to school, the children themselves will be afraid.
Mostly female children, because now that I don't understand, they are taking the female sex, like, I don't know what they want to use.
It becomes
an object, and then
to them.
now the male children will be allowed to go to school because they don't want them.
Yeah, also they are using these male children is because most of the time they don't say, they are forcing these male children to join the Haram and become fighters. Remember when amongst the 220 children they abducted in Chibok, when even those the little they found many of them pregnant.
Some have given birth. It's like they want to multiply. The Boko Haram, they want to build a new state, a new nation. I don't know.
The amazing part of the deal is that I remember some of these girls said, they want to stay with their guys in the forest because
they wanted to go back.
Brainwashed. Yeah, they love the situation. They have brainwashed. They have brainwashed most of these girls, and they say, oh no, they want to go back to the forest and stay with the dad of their kids and so on. It is very dangerous. You imagine you have a child, and then all of a sudden she said no, she wants to go to the forest. Can you imagine? It means she's being brainwashed.
Exactly. They have gone through a lot of trauma in that forest.
They've been traumatized, and these kids they are having, what is their fate? What they're going to become tomorrow? They are terrorists. That's all they can do, because they are not giving education.
Mostly if they grow in that forest, in that kind of situation, they will never know any other thing.
They are all terrorists. They are not giving educations, or the only education is Boko Haram education, and Boko Haram education is terrorism, is killing, is all what you can imagine. So I think it is time for Mr. Buhari. Like you said, I think he's very weak now. I think he's not longer the real commander-in-chief we expected him to be. So if he thinks that he is not longer the real guy, the guy to handle the situation, I think it's time for him to declare that he's not the one, and then they can find a solution to replace him, and then get somebody who will really take control, because this situation is very sad. And as a Cameroonian, I'm afraid, because if this Boko Haram gains more power in Nigeria, their first idea was to cross and come and extend their Khalifa to Cameroon borders, what I don't want. So I think we've done our part of the job. Chad as well. Chad helped both Cameroon and Nigeria, to really reduce
even
the
Niger
influence.
too.
Yeah, even Niger too. All these countries, we came to, because the movement came from Nigeria, Niger, Chad, and Cameroon. We just came because, we came to rescue the situation. We fought them in our Cameroon territories, and we went up to Nigeria to help fighting them. I think now that the movement has been reduced to Nigerian territory only, I think it's very important for Nigeria to really quench them out, and so that we should forget about them, definitely. And I think the government has the means to do that. It could be through intelligence, it could be through weapons.
Even the villagers, because Boko Haram uses the people on the ground.
They use the people on the ground, because who gave them the information that now the army has left? Who gave them if not the villagers? And if you don't use the villagers, they will turn against you. So that's what they do. Because the government is not using these villagers by giving them what it takes to help out the situation, then the Boko Haram,
because of their poor situation, the government is not giving them enough.
Of course, and then the Boko Haram will come maybe with
and give them
20 naira, 50 naira, and tell, hey guy, make sure every week I will give you 50 naira, or I will give you 10 naira, I will give you 100 naira, and then they will work for them. So I think it's important for the government to do whatever, to use all means possible
to really quench this Boko Haram fire? Because it is, I'm afraid that it might spread and then come
to escalate. Mr. Shune, do you think the government is actually doing enough? And because people, when they say they eradicate Boko Haram, who is actually behind this Boko Haram?
Yeah,
they are saying is when you want to get all the sources from the ground, you have different sources. Some people say it's the Western power that is giving them arms. Because when you see their ammo, they are really heavily armed. All of us know war is expensive. War is the most expensive thing that you can ever organize, because those guns are not cheap one bit. But if you see the way they are armed, you know that they really have big sponsors behind them. Some sources say they are being sponsored by some Western powers to destabilize some countries. Some other people say it is an African group that has been well prepared. What do you actually think about this Boko Haram insurgents group?
I think we have said this here before, time and again, that the Boko Haram insurgency that is struggling to institute the Islamic Caliphate on an African country, Nigeria, is not a thing from Africa. As a matter of fact, we have insinuated several times that they must be sponsored by some Western powers, in quote, in order to create instability in Africa so that they can come in for peace missions, and we know the outcome of all their peace missions. I am deeply disgruntled with the Nigerian government in particular. First of all, for withdrawing the army in Borno and the neighboring states, knowing fairly well that they are into a guerrilla warfare, because this is not a conventional warfare where you know your enemy.
Face to face.
The enemy is not known. You can wine and dine with the enemy every day and you don't know. At the moment you turn your back, the enemy strikes you down. So what the Nigerian government was supposed to do was to permanently keep the army in the north and in Borno around Chibok and where they just captured these girls in particular.
State, yes.
By so doing, they will have to institute an intelligence system where these people might be identified and arrested. Or, as Kwete was saying, we understand very well that there's a high level of poverty and unemployment. And the people of Boko Haram are using this weak link to employ these youths, give them jobs and money, and use them against the government of Nigeria.
Exactly.
How can the Nigeria not bring social facilities to these people? Give them good education, give them jobs, give them health care, so that they will see the difference between what the government is offering and what the enemy is offering, and they'll have to make a choice by themselves. By the time they lack basic necessities like health care, water, and food, they will always be willing to collaborate with the enemy against the government.
Exactly.
Because what the enemy is offering is better than what the government is offering.
Exactly.
And the commander-in-chief of that army, who asked that army to withdraw from that place, should be responsible for these 110 children who have been kidnapped. And I think in any advanced and modern democracy, he should resign or be sacked by the President of the Republic. So I think that we should take this issue very, very seriously. And by the time we understand the intricacies of stopping children from going to school. And then secondly, we know that Boko Haram have targeted girls in Chibok. How come the Nigerian army and the Nigerian government are not guarding all the girls' schools?
That is it.
Knowing fully well that in the north, as per the Islamic religion, they don't accept boys and girls to school in the same place. So we know that Boko Haram have been targeting the girls, and they had to leave this girls' school again open without any guard. I think they might give us the option to start thinking that there is a conspiracy between the Nigerian government and Boko Haram. Let me catch my breath.
Thank you very much. We'll just give our last words, probably each person 2 minutes to end this topic. What do you think is going to be the outcome? Because after this, we know the whole process, what happened in the Chibok girls, how long it took, and up to date, they have not found all of them. What is going to happen, even though the government has come out to give the details, because there's a committee that has been created. It was inaugurated on Wednesday, a 12-man committee to go to be the ones to give the information on it, what is happening so far, what they have done, the information they have got, and where the girls are. So this is even better than last time, because at least all the things, all the critiques which were given on the way it was happening last time, they're trying to adjust it, because now they came out with a list of all the girls, where they are from, their ages, where their parents are, and even put phone numbers there. Before in the incident last time, all that was not, and people really criticized the way it was handled. But this time around, they have tried to do that. But do you think it's going to really be different? Are these girls going to be found more than about 4 years or 5 years later? Do you think things are going to be different?
Oh, remember they decided to create this committee because there was a real mismanagement of communication, you know,
during the Chibok incident. Yes.
And even when this happened, because 2 days after they say, oh, we've got all the girls. Somebody said we've got all the girls, and then the parents say no. Most of the girls
still missing. They said 50, and
and then they say 110. So I think that's the reason why they decided to set up a committee to really communicate, to give the accurate,
information on what is happening.
On what is happening. But I'm not sure things are going to be different from the Chibok girls. Trust me, I'm not sure, because if it's already it's already 2 weeks or 3 weeks that this happened. 3 weeks in the forest is too heavy.
It's like 8 months.
It's like 8 months, and my concern is that even after finding this girl, maybe 3 or 6 months, let's say even 6 months only after, what becomes of the girls? They are already brainwashed. I'm telling you, some of the Chibok girls said we want to go back to the forest. They're not saying it because they are
and those are some of the girls that even give the bombs tie around, because they are willing to get into the population.
They are willing because they have been brainwashed, and this is the target of Boko Haram, to turn this girl into sexual objects, into bombs, into killing objects, and that is it. I think it is important for Nigeria, like we said, to really handle this case. And one of the problems is that we know, like you mentioned, that war is the most expensive, one of the most expensive industries in the world, because day in, day out, you have to spend money, and you don't get money. You have to spend money in weapons, in paying the people fighting,
in feeding. They are in the forest that they need to live.
They need to live, in giving them all what it needs to live in the forest. And we know that their sponsors are both internal and external, because they have sponsors out of the country, and they have these people are acting through their sponsors and sometimes they are having positions that you cannot even believe. So it is very complex case. This terrorism they are using to destabilize most of our nations, small nations. There are information that if you get, you will never believe. It is very, very complex, because when you see people, no single man, even if you have all the money of the world, you go out there, they say, I want to buy weapons. They will laugh at you, because it doesn't work that way. You need an authorization. You need a license.
With the number of weapons you need, because it's like a whole
and
small
the reason why you need these weapons. So, and then even after buying it, just to take it to your country or where you want to take it, it is another challenge. So we know that these guys are having huge sponsors, both internal and external. They are having sponsors. I think I will call upon the attention of the internal. There is no need destroying your country, maybe because you are having some, I don't know, money. Is it for money's sake? Is it for power's sake? I don't know what
for their belief,
really motivate, or their belief. I don't know. Is it fair? I don't know what can really motivate somebody to see this happening in his country. You are on girls, you are on children, people living in misery, living in poverty, and we know that this is for the government. I will ask the misery, injustice, and frustration are always the fertile ground of all this type of Boko Haram and all terrorism. When there is no justice in the country, when people basic needs are not taken care of, when people don't have, the minimum. We are talking of the minimum. We're not talking. We don't want people
big
to
houses,
be all things, big mansions.
If you don't have water, if you don't have electricity, you don't have health care.
No, that is not what we are asking. Mansions, good vehicles, luxury. No, we only the basic needs: electricity, water, and maybe when you are having a problem, when you are sick, you go to the hospital and you get a bit of treatment, some medicaments. That's what we are asking for. We're not asking for all the big things in the world. So I think this government have to take care of all these little things.
Yes, Mr. Shona, last words on the situation in Nigeria. Do you think this will be handled differently and these girls are going to be gotten on time?
I think it's not only about Nigeria, it is about Africa, because there's a deliberate attempt to keep Africa in permanent conflict, masterminded by some gurus around the world. And they know what they're benefiting when Africa is in permanent conflict. And I think they are manipulating our brothers and sisters to fight against our mother Africa. I'm calling upon them to be conscious that they are just fighting against themselves and they are just being manipulated. And Emanuela, you permit me, with your permission, I want to extend my sincere greetings to Mr. Langfoliga, the chairman, the president of the CRP, the Cameroon Reformation Party, which is preparing to go in for the coming elections. And I call on all the Cameroonian youths watching us now that the best way to bring change is to register and participate in elections. And the CRP is calling upon you to register and participate in the upcoming elections, I beg your pardon. And that's the best way you can perform your civic duties and responsibilities and become a responsible citizen of Cameroon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming to participate on the program with me. Thank you, televiewers, for watching. Have a beautiful weekend in the company of our programs. I'll be with you again next week. God bless you all.